There is a lot of yoga stuff out there. It can be pretty overwhelming. If you happen to, head to, for example, the sporting goods section of like a Target and you see all of the yoga props and everything, or even go to Amazon, just search yoga. There is a lot of yoga equipment out there, and it can be really hard to narrow down what's important to buy if you don't have a lot of money, if you're on a budget, but you want to begin and make sure you have the right things. So just kind of want to run through what I would recommend doing. And obviously, the big one is a yoga mat. If you practice at a studio, often they will have loaners. Some studios charge you for the loaners, but that is one place that I would strongly suggest starting with an investment. There are different types of mats made of different materials. Generally, ones that are made with rubber, or at least part rubber, are going to last you longer, and they'll be a little more grippy than ones that are made with some sort of a plastic. But the rubber ones will be a lot more expensive. So you can get an inexpensive mat somewhere between $15 and $20. There are some that kind of range up to the $30 range, and then there's a big jump, and then you start going up to $60, $70 on up to get one of the rubber-based mats. In my experience, I prefer the rubber-based mats in terms of I prefer a mat that's got some good grip because I practice primarily in the studio, at least a heated Baptiste style vinyasa flow, like power yoga. So I sweat a lot. So I need to make sure I'm not sliding around. And so that kind of mat really helps. But if you're just starting out, you could do certainly what I did and just start with a more inexpensive mat. One thing to look for when you are purchasing mats is to pay attention to the thickness, especially if you're buying online, but even in store, take a look at how thick the mat is. A lot of mats that are less expensive are going to be thinner. That can actually be nice if you are working on balance. A thinner mat means that there's less squishy stuff under your feet, so it's easier to keep your balance when you're practicing. However, if you tend to have joints that need a little bit more padding, especially if you're like in a lunge or something and your bottom knee is on the mat, a thicker mat will give you more padding. So hello, namaste. Thanks for tuning in. So what it really comes down to is thinking about what you need out of your mat. Personally, I prefer a thicker mat with a little bit more padding. So I look for generally at least a 3mm mat, but since I'm a yoga teacher, I also have a 3mm mat that I will use for travel purposes. So just think kind of about what your needs are. If you tend to feel very unstable, you might think about going with a thinner mat, like a 3mm mat. If you feel like you need more padding, then go with that 5mm mat. So the other piece of equipment that I would strongly recommend that you consider purchasing as a beginner, especially if you have very tight muscles, is a yoga block. This is going to be your best friend. Having a set of them is very nice. You'll see here I have a cork yoga block. I also have foam yoga blocks. Again, the foam ones are less expensive. That's what I started out with because they were less expensive. However, the foam ones are a little squishier. So sometimes when I'm practicing certain poses, the squishiness of the foam block can actually make you feel less grounded. And that's why if I were to go back again, I would just go ahead and buy the cork block. They're going to be a few dollars more, but ultimately I feel like, at least in my opinion, it's a better piece of equipment, and this is the way that I would go. It's nice and solid. It's great for even supporting big parts of your body. For example, if you wanted to do a supported bridge and place this on your sacrum, you can let your hips sink into the top of the block and it will support most of your body. Whereas if I were to do this same pose with a cork or a foam block, it's a little too squishy and I don't feel as steady. So if you are in the market for a block, which I would recommend if you're starting out, buy at least one block and get that cork block. What the blocks are going to do is it's going to make it easier for you to modify poses. What's nice about the blocks is there are 3 different heights that you can use to help modify the pose according to what you need. So if you're just starting out and you're still working on flexibility, you can go to the highest block setting and then take it somewhat lower. And then as you progress, you can essentially move the block according to what your body needs. Even day to day, your flexibility will vary. So that block is a nice way to do that. If you are looking for other products to look at, the next thing that I would recommend investing in would be a yoga strap. If you don't have one, though, you could always use a belt, a towel, or even if you have some sort of a strap, not even necessarily specifically a yoga strap, but something similar lying around, you could use it. What this is great for is helping you reach certain things. So if you're trying for a forward fold and you can't reach your toes, you can take the strap around your toes and it helps you access the pose a little bit more easily. Same thing when you're working on flexibility, say cow face pose, there's the arm variation where you're trying to reach your hands behind your back. You have to have very open shoulders to be able to do that. So as you're starting to work towards it, you can start with a strap with your hands far away, and then over time, as you practice over months, gradually you'll be able to get your hands closer and closer together. So it helps you as you are working on flexibility, allows you to access the poses a little bit more easily. So that strap is a great tool. And then as you advance your practice, then I would say would be the time to add in things like yoga bolsters that will help you, especially if you're in a restorative practice or you're a big fan of that. Until then, you could just use pillows or blankets that you have lying around. Oh, hi, Heather. Thanks for joining. So just to recap, lots and lots of yoga equipment out there, but if you're just starting out, you don't need to go out and spend... Hello. Don't need to go out and spend a ton of money. I would recommend investing in a good mat. It doesn't have to be super expensive, but don't go with the absolute least expensive, tiny, flimsy little one. I started out on a mat that I got with like a workout set. It was almost like an exercise mat-ish, but it was probably the thinnest mat you could ever possibly get. And that was one of the first things I replaced, was getting a mat with a little bit more padding. So again, just look for the thickness you need. And again, invest in that yoga block. This is going to be your best friend, especially if you have tight muscles. It's going to help you find the pose that feels right in your body. So hope this was helpful in helping you narrow down what you need to look for in different yoga products.